Awesome. Let us do this transformation geometry. Okay. So guys, transformation geometry relies heavily on what we call the Cartesian plane. Okay, so the Cartesian plane is basically a system or a set of axes whereby we are able to plot points or draw geometric figures or draw graphs on, which we'll eventually get to. But basically, it's a place where we can go and visually show some sort of mathematical relationship happening between two variables. So what I've got here is what is essentially a blank Cartesian plane. And I just want to chat about some important features of the Cartesian plane, some of which is going to sort of sit with you all the way up until matric and are important features that you need to know. And then also just discuss how we start to use this Cartesian plane. So for some of you, you know how to do this. For others, it is new. So just we're going to go along and we're going to make sure that we're all comfortable using this set of axes. Okay, so a Cartesian plane is made up of a vertical and a horizontal axis. So you can see here, there's two lines with arrows on them. There should be arrows on the other ends. I do apologize. And those are our two sets of axes. The horizontal one, so the one that lies flat, is our x-axis. And the vertical one, so the one that runs up, down, is our y-axis. So those are the two axes that we use on our Cartesian plane. The point where those two axes intersect, I'm going to throw the question out there. Does anyone know what that point where those two axes cross each other is called? You can raise your hand or you can put it on the chat. What is that point called? Okay, I see a couple on the chat. That is the point 0. Very good. Lungile, do you want to tell us?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me.
Ma'am, I'm not sure, but I think that is 0.
Good, good. Well done. Okay, guys. So this point is the point at 0. It's 0 on both the x and the y axis. Now, what we actually call this point is the origin. So whenever I refer to the origin, I'm talking about this point here, and it has a coordinate 0, 0. Now, I've just written this coordinate down, but let's actually understand what that means. Okay, so a coordinate is made up of two values, an x and a y value. Now, according to coordinate, according to the alphabet, the x comes first and then the y. So our coordinate will always be the x value and then the y value. So if we look at this origin point, x is 0 and y is 0. Alrighty. So that is our origin point. It's a point where the two axes intersect with each other. From here, we are able to draw or plot points on our Cartesian plane. Now, what's really important is that our axes have numbers on them or are scaled so that we can plot points. Now, sometimes we'll give you a set of axes and you don't need to draw them. Other times you will need to draw them. And then it's very much up to you what you want to sort of increase by for each block. For the most part, we sort of increase in ones. And so what I mean by that is, and I'm just going to take that 0, 0 off. If we go along towards the right on our x-axis, if you think of this sort of like a number line, we're increasing. So this point here would be 0.1, 0.2, 3, 4. And so what we do on our axes is we actually have a number line with which we can work and plot our coordinates. Now, how big and how small you draw your system of axes is very much dependent on what it is you're trying to plot. But essentially, that's how we work on our x-axis. Now, because we're sort of visualizing this as a number line, if I now go to the left along my x-axis, we can think of this as moving into the negative value. So this would be -1, -2, -3, and so on. Okay, so what we have is a number line that allows us to plot points on our set of axes. Now, the same thing will happen with the y-axis. If I go up along the y-axis, I'm going in a positive direction. So this would be positive 1, 2, and so on. Oops. And if I go down my y-axis, I'm going in a negative direction. So -1, -2, and so on. So this is how you guys would have to set up a set of axes if you were drawing it by yourself. Sometimes we give it to you, like I said, but we don't always. And so it is important that you know how to draw a set of axes if you need to. Okay, so those are sort of the basics of our Cartesian plane. 2 axes, x and y, and then we've got sort of numbers and values that we can work with. Now, because we have a coordinate, or we have ways of writing a coordinate always has to have 2 values. Like I said, the x and the y value. So that's what I've got over on the right-hand side here in red. Okay, so we'll always be working with an x and a y. So we're going to start getting hopefully a little bit more comfortable with this today. Right, so if you need to take a screenshot of this, please do before I move on. Hopefully, like I say, most of us will be comfortable or will at least know what the Cartesian plane is, but it is important that we are just all on the same page. Alrighty, cool. So I'm assuming we all have our screenshots.
Yep, we are all ready. Let's move, my team.
Okay, so the first sort of skill we need to have when working on the Cartesian plane is being able to read coordinates off of a Cartesian plane. So I'm going to leave this a little bit bigger. I have given myself space here to write down the coordinates, but hopefully we can all see this. So remember, as I said, a coordinate is always an x value and then a y value, right? Always. So we always read off the horizontal axis first, and then we read off the vertical axis in order to establish what point I'm working with. So if I have a look at point A, and I know there's a lot of points going on here. So point A is this point over here. We want to establish what its coordinate is. So I read along the x-axis. I see that it's from 3. So automatically I know the x coordinate is 3. And then if I read along the y-axis, I can see its y coordinate is 1. And so this point A has been plotted at 3, 1. Now, if I give you that point, 3, 1, you should be able to go and then either plot it on your Cartesian plane or sort of know where it is on the Cartesian plane so that you can then work with it. Alrighty, so let's go and have a look at point B. So point B is this one that I'm highlighting in yellow over here. Does anyone want to maybe have a try of what the coordinate of point B is? You can put your hands up if you are keen. Okay, Nkulumo, tell me, what is the coordinate of B?
Ma'am, the coordinate for x is 1.
Good.
And the one for y is 3.
Awesome, well done. Alrighty, so exactly as was said, we read off that it's at 1 on the x-axis and then at 3 on the y-axis, and so our coordinate is 1, 3. Well done. Okay, who wants to give me C? So C is now this one I'm highlighting in green. I don't know if we'll do all of these, but let's see. Who can give me C? Right, Bontle, tell me.
Ma'am, the coordinate is 6, 2.
Excellent. Okay, 6, 2. We read up for the x and we read across for the y, and we see that we're at 6, 2. So guys, remember x first and then y. And it's super important we do it in the correct order. If we mix them up, we're getting a completely different coordinate. Right. Who can try, and D is a little bit trickier, who can try and tell me what the coordinate for D is? So D is the one I'm circling in this like pinky purple color. Okay, Amahle, tell me.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
I think since we have to start the x-axis, it's going to be 8. I mean 8 is 0.
Okay, why 8? Is it not 7?
Oh, sorry, 7.
7, and then what was the second one you said?
0.
Excellent. Well done. Okay, so right. So guys, what's really important is if we have a point on the x-axis, remember we spoke about, and I'll come back to this now, so don't stress. Remember we spoke about the fact that the point where the two axes intersect with each other is at 0. So if I'm sitting on the x-axis, all of my y's here are equal to 0. And so this point now at D, because it's sitting on the x-axis, yes, we read off our x coordinate first, as Amatle said, but then when I get to y, because it's on the x-axis, I'm actually at 0. Okay, so whenever your y value is 0, your point is sitting on the x-axis. And that's a really important thing to remember. Whoops, sorry, I'm a bit wobbly tonight. All right. I see a couple hands up, so can I ask you to lower your hand if you had wanted to answer and leave your hand up if you have a question? We're going to do some more, so there'll be more opportunities for you to answer. So please just lower your hand if you don't have a question, but I'm assuming any hands that are staying up are questions. Okay, Wangi, do you have a question for me?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Is it possible for it to be like same numbers, like for example, 2, 2? Is it?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you, ma'am.
As long as you've read correctly off the X and correctly off the Y, they definitely can be the same, yes. Alrighty. Oratile, what is your question for me?
Hi, ma'am. Ma'am, I just wanted to ask if, let's say, ma'am, for D, I said 0 is 0 and 7, ma'am, and not 7, 0. Will my answer still be wrong?
Yeah, unfortunately it would be, because if we're talking about, and let me just get like a nice bright color here. If we're talking about a coordinate of 0, 7, we're talking about X being 0 and then Y being 7. So that would now be at X is 0 and somewhere at Y is equal to 7 up here. So that would now sit on the Y axis, not on the X axis like D is.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, good. Right, so guys, really important, and that's why I said it's so important that we put our coordinates in the correct order. If they aren't in the correct order, then we have this problem of working with the incorrect coordinate, which we don't want to do. Okay, I don't know what your name is. It's just a number here, 53940334.
You can tell us your numbers, I can change you.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi, who am I speaking to?
I'm speaking to Sikuyi.
Thank you. Okay, so Kuya, tell me what your question is.
Ma'am, I don't understand the Cartesian play.
Okay, what
I
don't
don't
you
understand
understand?
what happens.
Oh, gosh.
Ma'am, I'm not understanding the coordinates. I'm clueless. I don't understand what's going on.
Okay, so basically the Cartesian plane is like a way for us to draw or to represent a relationship between an X and a Y value. So if I tell you that X is a value and Y is a value, we can actually go and plot a point on the Cartesian plane to show that at that point, I'm working with an X value of whatever and a Y value of whatever. And so these two systems or sets of axes allow us to plot these points. So for example, if I take, let's just take a random coordinate here. If I take the coordinate for K is a very specific point on my Cartesian plane. K is a point that I find only when X is -3 and Y is 2. So -3, 2. And that is then that specific point on the Cartesian plane. Now, right now, we're just doing points. But what is going to be helpful to us is to know where these points are not only in this section, but this comes up in a lot of other sections in maths. And so what it allows us to do when you guys eventually start doing graphs and start doing like geometry and stuff like that, being able to work with coordinates on the Cartesian plane is super important, because there'll be certain calculations that we need to do with these coordinates. Now that will come up a bit here when we start to sort of look at how we can transform coordinates. But basically a coordinate is an X and a Y value that tells me exactly where I'm looking on my Cartesian plane. Does that help a bit?
Okay. Yes, ma'am, it does. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Good. Okay, so guys, you can think of your Cartesian plane as like a map, all right? It's allowing us to pinpoint a specific point with an X and a Y coordinate that we are working with, so that we can look at a specific place on the Cartesian plane. Alrighty, so I've done K. I can see a few people are sort of going ahead and having a look at other coordinates here, which is awesome. I'm glad you guys are doing it. So I'm going to pick a couple. I don't necessarily feel we need to do all of these. So can someone tell me what the coordinate for, let's do H is? Can someone tell me what H's coordinate is? Okay, Tsiamo, can you tell me?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
H is 3 and -2.
English. Awesome. Well done. Right. So H is, oh, golly, Miss Molly, 3, -2. We know that. We read X first. So there's the 3. And then we read across the Y to 2, -2 rather. And so our coordinate for H is 3, -2. Well done. Okay. Let us try the coordinate for G. Hands up, who wants to give me the coordinate for G? Okay, Wangi, tell me.
Ma'am, aren't they both -1?
For G?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if we read off the X, remember the X is up here at 0. So X is going to be 0, but Y is going to be -1.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so guys, G is at 0, -1. And that's another sort of important point similar to D. I can see that G is sitting on my Y-axis. And so because it's on the Y-axis, that is actually sort of in line with that origin point where X is 0. So that's why my X coordinate is 0. And then Y is at that -1 because I've moved down my Y-axis. Alrighty, let's do one more and then we'll have a break. Oops. Who can give me the coordinate for point P? Lungile, can you tell me?
Yes, ma'am. Point P, Anisha, ma'am. 3, -3, and -4.
Okay, so which one comes first? The -4 or the -3?
-4.
Good, well
-3.
done. -4. Good. Right, so guys, remember X first. So we read down from X, so -4. And then we read across for Y, so -3. And so P's coordinate is -4, -3. Right, well done, guys. Awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let you, screenshot this just so that you can practice with the rest of them if you would like to. But I think we've done enough now that hopefully we're comfortable reading coordinates off our Cartesian plane. Alrighty, so take your screenshots. Right, and we're going to have a quick little break. So get up, stretch, move your body. We need to run to the loo, run to the loo. And here is our brain break for the day.
That's what pips. Yes, the time flies, guys. I
Okay.
think like I was just 1 hour, like 1 minute ago, and now it's like half an hour later.
Okay, guys, remember brain break? It's just like a little brain teaser for you to give a try. We're essentially wanting to know the values of all of these different things so that we can work out the expression at the end there. So give it a go, give it your best shot, and then we'll have a look.
Oh, this time I don't get the joke. I don't care about your pie what.
Opinion.
Azandra got it. Azandra, well done. I couldn't get it. Tiamo holds that question now. I think Teacher Sam will just pin it, and like this we can get back to you.
Diamo, I might need you to raise your hand to explain that question. So let's do the brain break, and then I will try and help you. I'm just not 100% sure if I'm understanding your question, and it might actually be answered when we carry on with the lesson. So hang 10, and then let's see if you still have a question, then raise your hand and we can have a look.
Lee, are you ready to answer? I think Lee was ready to answer the brain
Oh,
break.
cool. Nice. I'm ready. Is Lee going to answer for us? Lee, do you have any answers for us? Hi.
Yes, ma'am. I have the first one.
Okay, cool. Tell me.
I said 16 plus 16 plus 16, give me 48.
Awesome. So 16, 16, 16 is 48. Now, guys, what's really important is that we see that these are 2 ice creams. So when we get to the end there, there's only 1. So just bear that in mind. But as Lee said, all of our ice creams are 16. Nice. Well done. Have we got anything else? Okay, Amahle, do you want to give us something else? Oh, okay, maybe not. Aviwe, can you give us anything else?
For the sweets, I said 94.
Okay, so if we're saying 94, let's just, oh, golly, sorry, guys. Chaos has ensued. Okay, I'm getting there. Just remember our order of operations. So we need to times first, and then we need to add. So if we're saying 94, 16 times 94 is 1,504. So it's a little bit too big. Do you agree? Okay, no problem. Right, let's see. If we said, okay, I'm going to take some sort of answers off the chat here. Someone said 12. Let's have a look at 12. So if these are both 12, 16 times 12 is 192. And if I add 12, I get 204. So well done. Again, I'm sorry, your name isn't on there. It's 165245. That's where I saw the 12. So well done. So really important, guys, remember your order of operations. Okay, so now we know our sweets are 12. There are 2 sweets there, but I don't have to stress because in the last one, there's also 2 sweets. So I don't need to worry about what one sweet represents. Okay, so we've got another ice cream here. That's the last one we have to get a value for. Again, remember that order of operations going on there. Have a look at what you've been given. Okay, Lorraine, do you want to tell us?
Hi, madam.
Hi.
Well, I said for the ice cream is 10.
Good. Okay, so the ice cream, yeah, because
10 times 10 is 100 and 100 plus 12 is 112.
excellent, well done. So guys, again, those order of operations, super important. Okay, we need to do the multiplication first. So we have to do the 10 times 10 first, which gives us 100. And then we can add the 12 to get 112. So now I know that these two ice creams here are 10. And remember I said at the beginning, the rainbow ice cream, we said that 2 of them is equal to 16. So now we only have 1. So we need to bear that in mind. Okay, so Bontle, do you want to tell us the last sort of situation that we have going on here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, tell me.
The last one is equals to 118.
Okay, how did you get that?
Ma'am, oh, sorry, ma'am. I said 12. Oh, sorry, ma'am. No, I mean 128.
Good, well done. Okay, so can you explain how we got it or how you got that?
Ma'am, I said 10 times 10. No, 10 times 12 plus 8, because I said 16 divided by 2 equals 8.
Well done. Well done. Okay, so guys, the first thing is this rainbow ice cream, because there's one of them, it's 8. Okay, so that's the first thing we needed to remember. Then as Bontle said, we need to do order of operations. So we need to do the multiplication first. Now 10 times 12 is 120. So we actually have 8 plus 120. And that gives me 128. So that is where we get that answer of 128 for our brain break, brain teaser situation here. So really important, remember, do the multiplication or the division first, or follow your order of operations correctly. Because if we don't do that, we're going to make some silly mistakes, which we don't want to do. Right, well done, guys. Right.
Yeah, you guys nailed it. Well done.
Okie dokes. So the next thing we need to be able to do in terms of our Cartesian plane is we need to be able to plot points on our Cartesian plane. So this is going to be a little bit harder to ask you to help me with, just because unfortunately it's a little bit hard to get plotting points from your side. But hopefully...
Sorry to just Sam, before we continue, can we please have Tiamo raising their hand so we can answer Tiamo?
Oh yes, of course.
Thanks, Tiamo.
Hi, ma'am. My question was that when you're making your own Cartesian plate, how do you make the points? Like before you plotting the points, how do you make the points?
I think this is what Sam is gonna explain actually. That's a good question.
So yeah, I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're sort of asking, if you draw your own Cartesian plane, how do we then decide where we draw the points?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. So basically it's very much dependent on how you draw your Cartesian plane. So for example, and I'm just going to move away from this for a second, because I do also think it's important to know how to draw Cartesian planes. The first thing that we always do, oh no, now I can't see what's going on here. I think this is it. Sorry, guys. I'm going to share my screen again. Right, there we go. So the first thing that we do is we draw our axes. So we draw our vertical one, and then we draw our horizontal one. And do you think this is going to work with me? Let's try. Right. So there's my X and my Y axis. You will obviously do it nicely with a ruler, nice straight lines like I've done here. And then we just plot our sort of values. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So very similar to what I did with this Cartesian plane here. I had just already drawn the lines for myself. Once you've done that, as long as you know what coordinates you're trying to plot, you really just plot them as you go along. So this is why, as Yolanda said, I think hopefully as we do this next example, your question will be answered. But basically, if you have to draw your own, just remember to start with the 2 axes and then you can fill the numbers on. Alrighty. So if your question isn't answered as we go through this, just pop your hand up again and then hopefully we can sort it out. Okay, guys, so we have got some points here that we want to plot. So I'm just going to start with coordinate A. We'll do it in this pinky color. A is at -2, 1. Now remember, this is an X first and then a Y. So I go to where X is -2, which is over here. And then I go to where Y is 1, which is over here. And where those two sort of values meet, that is where I plot my point, because now I can read off that it's at X is -2 and Y is at +1. And so this point here, if I were to label it, would be at -2, 1. All right, so we go along the x-axis to where it should be on the x-axis. In this case, it was at -2. And then we move up along our y-axis to where we should be on our y-axis, in this case, +1. And then where those two lines meet, when I sort of read up and read across, where they meet is where my point is going to be plotted. Okay, so Tiamo, hopefully that answers your question, I hope. But that is how we would plot point A. Okay, so let us try point B. So point B is now at 3, 0. So again, an X and a Y. I should maybe label my point A so that I don't get myself confused. Right, so point B, I've got 3, 0. So I read first the X, I go along to 3, which is over there, and then I go to Y. Now Y is 0, which means I'm not moving up and I'm not moving down. I'm staying exactly where I am. So this point here is point B at 3, 0. I haven't moved anywhere up or down on my Y axis. I've stayed at 0. So I'm staying on the X axis, but I'm staying on the X axis at 3, where it told me to be. Right, and guys, remember your numbers, if you're moving along, so if you go right along your x-axis, it's all the positive numbers. If you go left along your x-axis, it's all the negative numbers. If you go up along your y-axis, it's all the positive numbers. And if you go down along your y-axis, it is all the negative numbers. Okay, so that's how we know where our numbers need to be. Alrighty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give everyone a second to try and plot point C. All right. Now point C, I'm assuming you've maybe drawn a Cartesian plane for yourself. If you haven't, just think about where you think point C should be. I'm going to give everyone a second or two, and then I'm going to plot it, and I want you to check whether or not you got it correct or have plotted it in the same place that I plotted it. So think about where point C should be. Point C is at 4, 2. Okay, so if C is at 4, 2, I see Wangi's hand is up, so let me just go there. Wangi, do you have a question?
Oh, sorry, ma'am. I wanted to answer C.
Okay, tell me how I would need to go and plot it. Let's see if we can get this right.
Okay, where the 4 is, then just 2 up above 4.
Okay, cool. So, sorry guys. Remember X, Y, so we go to where +4 is on the x-axis, and we go to where Y is 2 on the y-axis, and where those sort of lines meet with each other, that is where I plot my point C at 4, 2. Now guys, you're not going to draw these dotted lines because otherwise it becomes quite complicated. So we actually just plot the point. We don't have to draw the dotted lines. The dotted lines are just for me to sort of show you how we get to that specific point. Obviously, to start off with, if you need to draw the dotted lines, that's absolutely fine. But it's not something we put into sort of our diagrams or on the Cartesian plane. Okay, so I would like you guys to again have a think about where you would put, and we can try again for someone to explain where you would put the point. Let's go to point F. So -3, -4. If someone wants to try and explain how I would need to do this, please put your hand up. Otherwise, for yourselves, think about where we should put that point and see if you agree when I plot the point. Right, Lungile, you're going to tell me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Then you put -3 from the x.
Good.
And then you take you put the negative to the y.
Good.
-4 to the y.
Good. And
yeah,
then,
and then you draw a line towards 4.
Good.
Then
Okay.
you say f brackets -3 dash and then -4. Then close bracket.
Excellent. Excellent. Well done. Alrighty. So guys, exactly, we go to where -3 is on the x-axis and -4 on the y-axis. And where those two meet, we can plot our point F. Again, you're not going to draw those arrows or those sort of lines or the points where you start at. You just plot that final point F. But F is now at -3, -4. Well done. Oh. Alrighty, let us try one or two. So very sorry. One or two more. And guys, I know this has seemed like a bit tedious, but it's really important that we get the stuff right. There are so many sections in maths that rely on the Cartesian plane. So I know it might seem like, why am I doing this? I know how this works, but if we don't understand the Cartesian plane, it's just going to create more and more problems. So it's really important that we're comfortable with this. Okay, so the next one I want you guys to try is G. That was a weird underlining that happened there. So point G. So have a think about where it should go. And then I already see some hands, which is awesome. Nkulumo, do you want to tell me or do you have a question?
No, ma'am, I want to tell you the answer.
Okay, tell me. How am I going to plot G?
You see the 0.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be for X. And then
Good.
for Y, it'll be the -1 directly underneath it.
Good. So we plot the point there.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Well done. Okay, so guys, this is G. Remember, we spoke about the fact that whenever our X is 0, it's going to sit on the Y-axis. So it sits on the Y-axis at -1 because X is equal to 0. Excellent. Well done. Right. Let us try a little trickier one with a fraction. Let us try, how mean do I want to be? Let's try E. Okay, so we've got 2.5 and 4. So think about where that should be. Think about what that means in terms of sort of your axes, especially for the X. And then let's go. Right, Oratile, tell me, or do you have a question?
I just wanted to, like, I think that the 2.5 goes in between the 2 and the 3.
Excellent. Well done. Whoops, sorry. So 2.5 is directly between 2 and 3. Awesome. Then what?
And then, ma'am, we go up to 4.
Good. And so now where those two sort of lines meet, obviously you'll do it nice and neatly with a straight line and a ruler. We can plot our point E. Good, well done. So there is my point E at 2.5, 4. Alrighty. So if sometimes we work with fractions on the Cartesian plane, and for the most part, the fractions should hopefully be nice, like a half or a quarter. But if you do get weird fractions, remember that you can always use your calculator to work out what the decimal will be. And this is why I said to you that your axes are like a number line. So if you imagine where it should be on the number line, you can sort of imagine where you should plot the point when you're working with a decimal. So if I think about my number line for 2.5, this is why Oratile said it should be halfway between 2 and 3, because that's where 2.5 would be on a number line. And so we can work with fractions sort of with that concept in mind. And then if you are at all confused about a fraction, so say, for example, h. Oops, so sorry, everyone. I don't know what happened there. If we go and have a look at h is now -3/2. Now, some of you might know what that is as a decimal, and that's awesome. But if you don't, use your calculator. So I'm going to do my best to explain this to you. I'm hoping everyone has a similar calculator that we can then work with. Either you can use the fraction and type -3/2, and then when you push equals, there should be like a little SD button somewhere if you have like a more scientific calculator. If you push that SD, what it'll do is it'll take it from a fraction to a decimal. And so you'll be able to see what that is as a decimal. If you don't have a scientific calculator, that's cool. Type in -3 divided by 2, and the calculator will give you what the answer is as a decimal. So any way that you choose to do it, once you type it in, this is actually -1.5, 0. So for point H, we know that -1.5 is between -1 and -2, so about there. And because the y is 0, I haven't moved up or down. So this is point H at -1.5, 0. Okay, so you can always use your calculator to figure out your decimals. You can, whether you have a scientific calculator or not, you can do it. Otherwise, like I said, for the most part, we try and give you nice fractions. Sometimes it doesn't always happen, and we just have to then do our best to get it as accurate as possible. So if you got like a weird fraction of like, I don't know, 1/3, so as a decimal 0,3333, it's not quite halfway, so you plot it as close as you can, and that is fine. Okay, we don't expect complete accuracy, especially when we're not giving you all of the decimals on the set of axes. Alrighty, guys, so I know this has been a bit of information, and like I say, I know that this might seem like I know how to do this, I know how to work with this, but like I can't stress how important this is.